Okay, so over in the spray booth, Styrol Res, you know this stuff, we love it. It's great. If it thickens up, just put a drop of IPA in it, which is what I've just done now, because it's getting a little bit thick. Okay, and then we're just going to pour it neat into the colour cup. Okay, check our flow. That's a bit better. To start with, it's very, very thick. Okay, and then what we're going to do is literally just put on a nice smooth coat. So it's absolutely everywhere. Obviously covering up the black, but we want to go everywhere anyway. Okay, so we're just going to liberally, remember it will self-level, shouldn't have any problems with this stuff at all. It's really good stuff. So it doesn't matter if you get a little bit too wet, a little bit too much, it should sort itself all out, no problem at all. Okay, so don't worry too much if it looks a little bit orange peely and stuff like that, it should be fine. Let's do this work to the front. Go around and do the underside. Okay, it's working round. Alright. It should be okay with one coat, but if you feel it needs two, I'd just give it around about 20 minutes to sort itself out and then come in with a second coat. But as I say, I shouldn't think you'll need it. Okay, first one done. Bit more just in here. Any gallons, probably do this for neat. So we've got the rotor head on, so I can just get down there and see it, no problem. Come in, those outside. Right, the way over everything. And if you see any big particular gaps or nasty joins in that, don't be frightened to come in with this stuff and give it a little bit more of a heavy coat just in that area, and that will then fill that quite nicely. You should just need one little bit more. Okay, and then what we're going to do is let this dry for a couple of hours to sort of self-level, sort itself out. Okay, blend itself in, all those areas. Back again. And in there like that. It's a little bit thick, this stuff. My only drawback with using Styrol Res, it's thickening up over time. Okay, so I'm thinning it continuously now with a little bit of IPA just as a thinner, which works really well with it and everything else. But you can see it's self-leveling already, which is quite nice. That's what we wanted. Might just put a tiny bit more down in here. Okay, and you might hear I've got a nut in there just to keep it all nice and moving. Okay, this is a little bit more on these rears purely because we got that seam line and also where we had to cut off the tails to get it all in. This will help it sort of all blend in nicely. Don't worry too much about if you're left with, like at the top here, some of the details have gone. They will dry back, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to leave this for around about sort of an hour, totally go off, come back, have a look at it. If it needs any more work, obviously we can do it to it, okay? Or we can get straight on with the pre-shading. Okay, so with the primer coat all down, looks absolutely fantastic, gorgeous stuff, very smooth. So don't worry about if you get any lumps and bumps or that sort of orange peel effect when you first put this down. Give it sort of, 24 hours and then come in and you'll find it be lovely and smooth as we've got here. So what we're going to do is work our way through the weathering. Now, obviously there's a lot of discussion about different ways to weather at the moment seen on the internet. Quite frankly, I'm going to stick to my usual routine. We're going to pre-shade. Now to pre-shade, literally this is just putting down a darker colour. In our case we're obviously going to use an off black, literally to cause a shadowing effect in the paintwork and to break it up. Now this by its nature is going to be this sort of blue-grey colour which is going to look like a bit of a brick. Okay, so by putting this down, it will break up that first coat of paint. Then we can come in and put down the base color. We can fade, okay, and darken the paint as is required to give us that type of look. Then we can get the decals onto it, seal it, okay, and then we can work our way through our sort of weathering, and then by sanding down, lightening some areas, darkening some areas, we should be able to give it what we need for an overall paint job. Then we can come in afterwards with washes, streaking effects, chipping effects, and all things like that to really give this thing a worn, weathered look to it. So to start with, we're going to come in with some rubber blacks. This is just Tamiya XF85. We got our standard airbrush setup down here. So this is basically the Infinity. This is the normal Infinity, not the CR Plus. CR Plus is there, they're just the same. Okay, so with this particular airbrush, what we've actually got in here is a 0.2 needle set in that one. Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to give this a good old shake. Now, if you see me using this, this isn't actually the Vallejo thinners. This is actually Tamiya X20A. It says on the label. It's just that I find it easier in here than it is to have a pipette and try and dispense it. Okay, so we'll just give this a good shake. All right, and we're just going to move this camera just a touch out a little bit more. So we're just going to pull this up just a hair, just to give you a better look. Okay, we're in a new spray booth setup, as you might see. I've got the big one set up now. All right, so what we're going to do, into the colour cup goes around about I don't know, it's probably 0.5 mil. A thinner's gone in there, just like that. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make up a 50-50 mix. Okay, just down in here like that. So we just double that up so it's around about 50-50. Now, don't worry too much. I say this every time we get to this stage of the actual airbrushing and everything. Don't worry at all about how your pre-shading goes down, because technically you don't want it to be nice. Okay, far too often people do fantastic jobs of pre-shading, and what happens is it looks like a checkered effect underneath the paintwork. You want this to be fuzzy, spitty, fades in, fades out, too heavy in some areas, too little in others, and that gives you your randomness of exactly what we're after. Okay, so our usual thing, we'll just try and keep our mat a little bit cleaner just for a couple of days at least. All right, so down in here, just check our flow. What you're looking for is nothing giving you a hairline finish and all the rest of it. You're looking for consistency. So when you're putting this down, when you're spraying your paintwork, you just want it to come out all the time to be flowing. Okay, if you've got good paint flow, you can control it a lot better. If it's stopping and starting, then perhaps you've got something down in the needle end. You might want to actually adjust it and everything else like that. Okay, so what we're going to do, we will start on the bottom. Really simple. Okay, follow your panel lines, all right? So that's all you're trying to do, is to recreate panel lines. And then in some areas, perhaps you want them to be a little bit darker. Okay, so some shaded areas, so perhaps down this groove, we're just going to help along the weathering. So what we're going to do is, you see this little line running down here? It's quite heavy and thick. We're just going to give it a little bit of darkness. Okay, so we're just going to put in a shadow. All right, this will be, so it'll just help you, the model, look more shadow and light spotted than it actually is. Okay, now we're going to follow panel lines, and you might notice we're doing this freehand so we can wobble, because we want this to wobble. We want it to be nasty. We want it to be everything. If you want it to be a little bit nicer, then what I would recommend is taking your paint bottle, things like that. Okay, stick it underneath it so it holds it in the particular position you want it to be, just to make it a little bit easier to spray. Okay, regulars will know I've actually bought a colour cupped lid, which will make a massive difference to me sticking it everywhere. Then what you want to do is keep your paper towel just down next to you, just to blow, making sure you're clean, pinch clean the end if you've got it, okay, to stop you getting build up. Okay, and then you can use two hands if you wanted to, just to come in and just to make a bit of a sharper line. Got a panel line, so we're just going to do the shadow edge. Okay, just down on that side. All right, so what we're going to do, we're just going to literally just do the bottom areas. Okay, and anywhere that's got a lump, a bump, or anything else like that is going to get it. Big areas we will avoid. Okay, so we've got panel lines just down the back here. Okay, got some panels there, got a panel there, got some panels. And you can see we're not perfect, we're a little bit speckly, we're a little bit clumsy with this and all the rest of it. That is what you want. All too often you see it and people are too good for their own good, and it looks too good, all right? So you want to go over the top. You want it to be slightly speckly, because this speckleness will actually transfer to your next coats of paint and will make them better. Okay, so what happens is when you put the top coat down, the speckles get taken in, you get to look like weathering, it looks like darker spits and spots in the paintwork and all the rest of it. From an overall point of view, will look better. Okay, so what we'll do now, we'll transfer down here, and we're just going to follow Okay. Okay, and all you're doing is trying to pick out anywhere that perhaps would be a little bit shadowy. Okay, so down here we've got lots of lumps and bumps and things going on, gets lots of work down there. This big panel at the top here won't be so much, because we'll focus on sort of rain effects and streaking in this area from coming around from these top parts. Okay, so we don't want to lose any of that, so we'll just avoid it. Okay, but anywhere that's got a bolt handle, they're going to get a little bit, just a little bit down here. We've got some panel lining. Okay. Okay, around the door. Okay, that big join. Hatches, all those areas. And that's all it is. It's just a simple thing of putting in shadowing and dirt effects and things like that. So we'll just have a little bit around the door there, on there. Happy how that is. Take it off this rotator just to make it a bit easier to get in the top here. And then all the way around these top areas just so we can get in there. And don't worry about going from one side to the other, because you can always go back and sharpen up afterwards. Okay, so these grills, we're just going to go in, put some colour into those. Everything in, on the top. Then every now and again, over to your paper towel, blow it all out, pinch clean the end, and what happens is you see these little stripes here. This is just where you're pulling dried paint off the needle, and it will just make everything look a little bit better. All right, so we're just going to come in this side now, come up, be a little bit more speedy. Okay, these grills and vents, we're just going to fill all those in. Okay, this one just to tidy it up, a little bit more down in here. Okay, we're actually not looking too bad everywhere now. Nice big piece on that back area. Okay, and then just on this tail. Anywhere that has lines, joins, lumps, bumps, anything else like that, we're just going to get in there. Okay. Some panels on here, so we're just going to pick them out, little dots, anywhere it's got a panel, just to darken them up. Okay, then what's going to happen is we're going to sand into this, so this darker stuff will hopefully show through as well as the lighter stuff and all the bits and pieces. So by doing in these panels, it just gives them another layer of paint that we'll have to go through, and it should make things a little bit easier when we come to that stage. But don't forget, all of this is irrelevant, because if we didn't like it at any point, we could just give it a heavier coat of the actual top colour that's going to go on here, and it will lose it. Okay, so we won't have any problems with it at all. So we're just going to whip around these doors. Okay, nice big panels down there. Okay, up around the front, around these windows. Okay, little bits on there. Here, because all you're trying to do is recreate what you're seeing, okay, by bleaching and shadows. Okay, bleaching obviously lightening things up, shadows by anything that we're trying to make darker. Okay, so down here, let's have a little bit around the glass work, just to break it all up just a little bit. Top. Okay, we can just pop down here and do these tails. But again, don't be too nice with it. Try and keep it rough and random, and that will just help improve the overall look. Okay, so we've just got a little tiny bit more just to do around here. Okay, just bring it down in here. Okay, so generally just make sure you've got all your major panels and anything else you want to do. We're just going to pop a little bit around here. Okay, and anything else you think may need just another little bit more weathering. To be honest, this rotor head is pretty good, but what I'm going to do is just going to give it a splash over it just to give it some shadowing. Okay, so we're sort of coming down from the top so it will look lighter, just to help break it up just a little bit. So down from this side, obviously everything's grey. From the top half, it's more darker. Okay, so that way it'll just give us automatically a little bit of weathering going on with this. All right, so really happy with that. What we'll do is we'll have a good look round it, make sure we're happy. Going to do the wheels, so these are just going to be painted black. Okay, the idea with these is obviously we'll do our usual trick. So this is just so you're painting the tyres, and then we can just pop them over there out the way. Okay, so you're just painting the tyres. We've sanded these to get rid of the centre seams and the grooves that they had. These are going to have green, that standard sort of Russian tyre hub green into all of these. All right, so we just spray this down. Okay, just like that. So what we do, hit the extractor, get some of this sucked out, get the airbrush cleaned up, and then we can think about top coat. Okay, so here we go. This is our colour scheme we're actually going for. Now, this particular one, there's various photos on the net of it in different stages. There's one of it which is very clean. There's one of it that looks like it's been around a while, and various stages in between. So we're just going to basically go with artistic license on ours as exactly what we want. Now, the colour callouts are a little bit, well, generic, shall we say. They're not Russian colours, certainly not the Ukrainian colours and all the rest of it. These ones down here. Now, obviously, Acan do a range of Russian paints, things like that. To be honest, I've got the Hind ones, which aren't really much good. They tend to be different colours. The colour call out for this one that they're giving is for the F16 FS36, 375 or H308 as we're using with the old hobby colour ones. Now, it's not a bad colour for the base. Okay, so if you wanted to go for the weathered look of these particular helicopters, this is the one. It's all right, it's the grey, okay, but the thing is, when you look at them all, they're not grey, they're blue, okay? So the only thing I've got that's halfway there is this stuff, which is, what is it, just before we open it, which is, it's for the Japanese colour for the Blue Impulse, the light blue. So it's H323. Now, obviously that's far too dark, but it's not a million miles away if it is to be lightened. So what we're planning on here is the old artistic license, and we're going to mix these two to give us the shade we want. Now, there is lots of chipping on the reference photos I've got of this one with the dark blue, so I don't know if they're touch-ins or what they are and all the rest of it, but generally we're going to try and make a bit of a mix between the two. So what we got here is a couple of shot glasses, or plastic ones in our case, really cheap, but we can knock these up and have a good look to see exactly what we get. Okay, so always starting with your lightest colour, because this is obviously your base colour to this one. They've had a really good shake. What we're going to do is just going to tip him a little bit in there like this. Okay, Now, we know this is pretty good. Now, on the bottom, it's saying it's the lighter grey right the way through. So this is what we can do. We can use this colour as the light one underneath, no problem at all. But this is more for the blue at the top. We're trying to colour match here. Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to take a few drops. And when we say a few drops, we literally just mean a tiny little smidgen like that. And that's our start, okay? So then we're going to pop it in here and mix the two. So what we're trying to do is get this to go to have a blue hue to it, and immediately, actually, that isn't too bad. That's looking quite tasty. So a good mix, and now we've got this. You can probably see it's the reason I like using the shot glasses. On the side, you've got the blue, the original, the colour we mixed up, okay, and the grey, and you can see exactly what we've got going down on there. So I'm actually quite happy of how that is, and actually, I don't think that's a million miles. I'm probably going to add just a little bit more blue to it, okay. But it's definitely going in the right direction. So what you want to do now is add a little bit of time and just keep bringing this up to the color standard you want. Now I've got, to be honest, over on my monitor, my main reference picture, which is the sort of in-between blues, okay? So this is what we're going for, this sort of intermediate blue between the two. So I've got one photo that shows it obviously when it was first done, it's very dark blue. I've got another one which is grey, where it's faded out, and then I've got this one I'm looking at now, which looks to be pretty close to that. I'm thinking just a touch more blue in there, and this will be our base. This is the colour we're going to weather. Okay, so by weathering it, what we can actually do now is go both directions with it. So we can lighten it to obviously give it a more faded look. We can lighten it with the grey. We can use the grey for the underside, that's no problem at all. But also what we can do is darken it slightly to give it that look where it's had touch-ins and various things like that. So this is what I'm looking for. I don't like the ACAM way of actually having weathered paint because you can't actually weather it yourself. Okay, so that's in there like that. Now what I'm going to do is just going to add a little bit of thinners into this because we've mixed the paint. This will just help it all mix better and everything else down in here. All right, so we're just going to mix this up before we go in with our actual colours. Okay, very happy of how that is. Okay, now by the looks of it, the grey is sprayed on first, which is fair enough, and then they come in and put the blue over the top and just paint it freehand right over. There's no markings, no nothing. Also, the thing is, on the instructions here, it actually says about this back panel being grey. I'm looking at it and it certainly isn't. It's just blended in with the rest of it. So these are just painted as normal. If anything, the one on this side of my reference photo looks like it's been sprayed blue. Okay, but it isn't showing it as grey as this is. All right, but again, personal choice on all of this one. So what we're going to do, we'll leave that to one side because that's exactly what we want. We're going to come back with this grey and we're just going to mist down very light grey onto all of this. So we just come back with a colour cup. Okay. Okay, thinners in and a quick test blow. Happy with how that is. Okay, so what we're going to do is a standard 50-50 mix down in here. Okay, perhaps a little bit more than 50, as in, you know, probably do around about 60% thinners to your paint because you don't want to totally obliterate everything down on here. Okay, check our flow. Paint colours coming through okay. Just pop the lid on, move that out of the way. Okay, and then what we're going to do is the underside. So what we're going to do, happy, very light coat, and we're literally going to let this build up very slowly so we don't lose this pre-shading. We want to keep this pre-shading down in there. Okay, so you're literally just laying down little wet coats, and as soon as it disappears, a good old way of doing it, we'll stop. Okay, so then as you can see, it's down in there. We've got those nice dark shadows which actually look dark on camera. As you catch them in the light, looking quite dark, but then you bend them over, they're not too bad. This is the optical illusion we're going for. Then obviously this front area, very light, just taking it. What we're going to do is just draw a natural line all along the bottom. Okay, and we're just going to lightly build all this up. Okay, very light and dusty, smooth, and he does it. Okay, looking very, very good. I'm just going to hit the extractor because we're getting a little bit smoky in here. Okay, so we're just going to go around the back, the insides. And that's how we're looking. It's giving us a nice weathered effect, and hopefully you can see that it actually has this area down here. I can't see it. Yeah, I'm looking on camera. You can see it looks dark. It's not. It's this optical illusion we're saying because we've got the pre-shading in there. What happened is this will come back darker, but what you're trying to do is just making sure it's even absolutely everywhere. And to say off camera I've got the real thing. Actually, I'm quite happy with the way that is for the moment. Okay, so that's down there. So what we're going to do, we're just going to let that dry for around about sort of 20 minutes, just to totally go off and everything else like that. And then we can come back in and we can then start painting the upper surface with the blue, and then we're going to work our way through them. So obviously we'll start with the blue, and then we're going to then go darker and lighter, tone it all down, get it to how it's looking in the picture, looking slightly more bleached on the surface, the tail end's looking quite grubby, so we'll let more pre-shading show through and everything else like that. Okay, so there we go. That's looking down there. As you can see the pre-shading coming through, that's the type of thing. See this lovely glossy finish, which is obviously what's really, really the nice part about using the gun stuff, is that it has a gloss base, so when we're coming in with weathering or anything else we want to do, you've got that nice finish. But this is what we're saying about this all important, like seam line down the bottom and everything else like that. It needs to be good, otherwise it's going to show up even more than normal. So this is our blue colour, which there's also method in the madness for letting it sit and stand. It's so you can have a better look at it. Okay, so I'm looking at it now thinking it's good for the mid-range. I've probably overdone the blue a little bit, maybe want to knock it back with a bit of grey, but considering we're going over a grey finish and everything else like that, we should be okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly as we did before. So it's going to be around about 60% thinners to probably a little bit too much thinners in there. Okay, I'm going to be way too much paint. What we're going to do is just empty some of this out. That's that. All right, and then what we want it to do is obviously more thinners than paint, and then that way it will go well. Okay, so let's pop that out of the way. We come in with the brush now to give this a good mix. Got a little bit of green on it, which won't hurt. Okay, now the reason we've got green on there is because I've also sprayed the wheels. We've done the hubs using the template system. So just a shot down here, we've done those with the green hubs on there. Very straightforward, seen me do that loads of times. Okay, so we just check our flow. Okay, all coming through very nicely. Now looking at it, see it's that sort of light blue, but when it goes on here, because it's a darker colour, it should come through more sort of greyish. All right, so what we'll do a little bit and then we'll hit the old extractor. So for the minute, what we want to do is shoot away from the grey stuff. Okay, so you can then sort of come in and cut up, and then we can fade in afterwards. But what we don't want to do is sort of coming in like putting it in here, because we're going to get overspray all down this lower edge. All right, but where we can start is obviously around the back end to get a feel for it. All right, so what we're going to do, very lightly putting on a lightish coat, and as you can see, we're not automatically just going blue here. It's coming in with that blue sort of hint. Now it needs to be nice and dirty on the back end, so we can just build it up quite slowly, and actually I'm quite happy with that. That's coming in roughly how we wanted. So what we're going to do now is just going to draw an imaginary line around about here, and we're going to go everywhere above it. So again, we're just laying down a thin layer. Okay, and we're gently going to build this up. Now the point of this is holding it somewhere. All right, so what you want to do is obviously grab it somewhere that's not going to matter. All right, so what we'll do is I think we'll just play with it on its side. Okay, now we're just going to ease this down, spraying backwards like that. Okay, and we can come in, very light little pass over the tops. Now these gear legs have quite a bit, but we can shoot across it down here if you like. So loads going on, colour cup lid. guarantee that you buy these things and then you never use them. So there we go, that would have stopped that from flicking everywhere. Pick that up. Okay, and then these legs again shooting down away. Okay, then we can sort of come down now, and this way we can just sort of blend everything, or the idea is just blending it all together. Okay, and then we've got this nice blue colour coming through, and you can see loads of pre-shading on there, so we're going to have to knock that back just a little bit, but this is what it's all about. So we're just going to run around the front, okay, up over the top. Alright, and then around here, and then what we'll do is, obviously where I'm holding it we won't go near, but everywhere else we can. But you can see on the back here how it's gone dark again, so what we're going to do, another light coat, and then obviously we're just going to come back over the back, and we're doing vertical movements down now just so we get all a little bit of difference. Okay, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, a little bit around the back here. You can see it's nice and glossy, so what we're going to do is we're just going to switch, and again just lightly building up. We're not coming in flooding it or going completely over the top, it's all trying to be done very muted. Okay, and if it's looking a little bit too wet, as in too shiny, we'll just hold off and we'll go elsewhere and then come back. So we do the tail on this side, and there we go. Now we're looking a little bit foggy in here, so what I'm going to do is hit the old extractor, carry on, and you can follow. Okay, so there we go, that's coat one. Now obviously we've got to do the top half and all the rest of it, but this is just to show you. So picking this thing up is very tricky. So there we go, that's the type of look we're going for. Okay, now actually I'm pretty happy with that colour. It's got a nice colour, it's got a nice depth to it and all the rest of it, but what we want to do is obviously play with it a little bit. At the moment you can see the pre-shading coming through and everything else like that, but generally the paint's laying down very smooth, very nicely and everything else. But what we want to do is obviously modulate it slightly, okay, by obviously lightening it, darkening it and all those things. But you see this stuff down the back, actually I'm quite happy with. I'm quite happy to leave it just like that, but generally it's just getting that nice blue hue to it and all the rest of it. And then what we'll do is I need to put in a little bit more paint around this top half, but we can actually go round them and start to sort of just play with it. So add bits, take bits away, think about how light's going to hit it. So obviously this top's going to be a lot more bleached, underside's going to be more grubby, obviously down the back end's going to be very dirty and things like that. So you want to leave more pre-shading, more things like that back there and all the rest of it. But generally I must admit I'm very happy how this is going. So what we're going to do, knock up a little bit more paint, just do this top half, and then we'll leave it then for around about half an hour again to sort of go off, and then we can play with this paint just to see exactly how it's going down, seeing how it's going to actually work when we lighten it. Will it make a massive difference to the color? Because obviously we need a nice good contrast color for the bleaching effect and everything else. And then obviously we want to darken it up in some areas, perhaps do some repair work, some little panel work, things like that, and generally sort of tidy it up. All right, so what we're going to do, just pop another little thin coat down on here, on the top here. This one's going to be quite a thin coat because it doesn't need to be too much on here at all. It is what it is. Okay, so we can just spin this guy around. But we're just making sure, what you're trying to make sure is you've got no heavy duty lines. Like this down here with this dark is too strong, all right? So we just want to knock that back. So as many coats as it actually needs just to take it back to where you want it to be. Okay, so we've got a few little fingerprints as well just around this intake, but these intakes are going to be black. Okay, so don't worry too much about flooding over it, letting the paint self-level to fix itself. Okay, all right, and now we can just pop this down just like this and just work some more coats over everything exactly where we want it to be. All right, but when we come back it should change color, okay, and give us a slightly different look to what we got now when the pre-shading all starts to come through. Okay, so what we're doing at the moment is just adding a few more where it's a little bit too strong, like just down here on the back here, things like that. We're just putting a little bit more just to knock it back. It's a bit too much. Same on here on the top, okay, because we're obviously going to lighten it up, but you don't want to totally kill any work you've done with pre-shading and things like that. Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit more right over it. But this is what we talk about with thinning the paint. It enables you to build up the layers very slowly instead of coming in and being in a situation where perhaps you got your paint a little bit thicker and you end up actually just obliterating all the pre-shading and losing it. Remember, you want to work with it, not kill it. Okay, so there we go. That's about where we want to be. We're going to let this dry, see exactly what we got, and then we can play with the modulation of the color.